and then you'd have all these files created under .git that are now being tracked, and literally a really long list of all the projects and files. And I'm only doing this within. Oh. So I think now I can branch. So now we have a branch, and now we can list all the branches that we have. So it failed because there's nothing being tracked, so you can't branch off a project that is not initial. It's not initialized. It was initialized, but nothing was being tracked, so you can't really branch off because you have nothing. So now we have two branches. We have a dev branch and a master branch. Assuming that this was production level code, then the master would be code that we would have deployed on some server somewhere running that we do not want to touch. And that particular dev branch would be, maybe we have a new change, and we could go over a change like removing a route or adding an endpoint to an API, or maybe just a typo change. It could be as simple as a typo. So we could do a typo change and then so then we can check out. So if you want to switch between branches, you just do checkout, and then you check out that particular branch that you want to work on. So you branch off your current project or your current version, then make a change, then merge. So master would usually be what you have at production, and dev would be just a dev branch that you want to make a change on. So ideally, this would be on maybe the current version that you're running. So it's a master version. You're just adding a new feature on that. But you could even do this on, you could target and have different versions, and then make a change, which is hanging lightly on all the version too. So So let's say, for instance, we want to remove this comment. Maybe we don't need the comments, and maybe these comments were just too many comments. And the dev was just writing nothing in the comments. So we can also remove a route. Maybe we don't want the index page, or maybe we want to rename the about page to something else. So we'll just rename all those. And so after renaming, we'd of course save. And then you quickly see that it's showing you still have untracked files. And if you do a show, it will then give you the changes from the previous commit. So one of the last changes we did was, oh yeah, sorry, I need to go back. Yeah, so under, this is not, I did something wrong because under one of the projects I was doing version controlling it, and I have a .git within it, which is not right. So yeah, so that's wrong. But I think I'll just quickly remove that. Is that legal to have one main project under version control, then one of the tiny projects within it under version control, and then? But I guess one will ignore the other, right?
It's interesting that, because when you are initializing a new one, you tell you there's one.
There's already an existing one. But what if the existing one is already a project within the project? Is it? Okay. So okay, we'll use this. Then you can see that. So I can't make a change in the other one, but I can make a change in this. So we can maybe change the token, because it's stupid to push a token to a server. So we could just say token. And then, so then it quickly shows you the X. So if you're using something like a Z shell and not Bash, it will show you the X and tell you you have, or even Bash can do that as well. But it will show you that you have something that it's tracked, yes, but it has a change. So you need to go look at it. So if we do a show, it will show you your last commit and what you did. So it will show you all these classes because you're doing additions and nothing was deleted. So it's a very nice tool if you want to look at your previous commit or what another developer might have written, especially if you're collaborating. So the other one is the diff. So upon a commit, from one commit to the other, there'll be changes that will be tracked. And if you do a diff, it will show you just that particular change. So sometimes maybe you fear that you might have changed something you're not supposed to change. You just always do diff over the file. Or if you do over all the files, you just do a git diff or diff a particular file, and then look at look at the changes that were made, and maybe revert or just to confirm that the change was a real change and something that is not going to break anything. So if you're sure, then you again track it. If you do commit, it will automatically add. Of course not. But now, so now we can commit, and with committing, you have a message for committing because you made a change, and someone who's reading or someone who you're collaborating with needs to look at that particular change and say, oh yeah, you added a new feature, you removed a comment, or you fixed maybe a potential bug that no one had seen. So you could say remove the token, since it's not safe to push a token anywhere online. So we did make a change, and it will notify you and tell you there's one file change, one insertion, one deletion. Yeah, so I think with those particular 4 commands you can do so much. You don't need to understand, at least for now if you begin, you don't need to know what exactly branching is, how you're going to use, how you're going to create different branches. But just to get you guys started, I think that's a good it's a good intro to VCS. So some of the benefits of this will be that we've been doing all these commands, and there were a few errors, and there was so many things going on, and most of you are just, okay, that's nice. How is this helping me? But yeah. So this is important because you don't want to back up files, and you want to maybe have your project in different origins. So one of the last things we'll do just to wrap this up is how can we push this code on a server somewhere, on Git, on Bitbucket, on is there any other collaborating you could even have your custom one. You only use just the Git daemon. So one of the last things we'll do is that, but the benefits are so many. So for collaboration, you do not want to copy a file and tell them, oh, I changed between line 16 and line 20. You don't tell them I changed line 20, column 13. I removed the E and put an F. It can't work. So GitHub and Bitbucket, for example, give you a better Vim diff or a better way to show the diffs of the differences between different files. So you can look at maybe one commit, the other commit, one branch, the other branch, and then compare what are the changes this person made. So the commands you just need to remember are init to initialize. And Windows has a really good graphical tool. Even Linux has one. You could do git k. Those commands are just really complicated, I think. So if you do git k, it's like the one on the Mac or the one on Windows. It's not so different. So then you can. This is more friendly, I guess, to everyone. Maybe I should have started with this and not what. So, but how many guys feel like they would want to try Git after this?
Let's stop this stream.
I guess I was a disappointing talk, right? Everyone. How many guys would want to try Git and go look at Git? Maybe the command line was not so friendly. I would not use it again. Okay, so if you use this, then it can show you. For example, here's a change on one of the files. By default, I think it just shows you it does. So this is almost the equivalent of a Git show, if you think about it. Because if you did a Git show, it showed us just this that we had removed. This is our last commit. It will show us our commit history. So it will tell us we removed the token. If you do a diff, it will show you the particular change in the last one, and it will tell you what file it was. So you can see it's do.py. And so you can see the branches and the last commit on each branch. Dev, master, new, remove token. So for example, if you were to merge out, you merge out. You can merge out the user. Wait. That doesn't make sense. You can't merge it. But you can. Okay, how? You branch out, then you merge it. Okay. So yeah, on the graph, it can show you how from, yeah? I can do merge. So then we can say we want to check out master. And then, so when you're merging, you just check out the project you want to merge. So you want to merge master from another branch called dev. And then so it'll go look at dev, and then look at master, look at the two branches, look at the changes on each branch. Merge which, if there's nothing conflicting on master, for example, if you had not changed geo on master, and you had not changed, for example, and of course if you changed this on dev, if you're merging, it would be really fast and successful. But if master was ahead, maybe those other commits, maybe there's another dev who had worked on it and then merged out, and then he finished he fixed his bug before you, and he made the change. You might have to do a stash at that point if nothing is being tracked. Right? But if both were, if there was a commit and it was up to date and you're doing a merge, the file is really changed, it might be a bit tricky. Yeah. But there's other tools that can help you. For example, you can stash all the changes and then merge and then resolve some of the conflicts. But it's not. Yeah, so I think we can start with this 5 commands, 6 commands, and so yeah, you can see that dev would then merge with as a view. You can see that master and dev were merged, and now there's this new here. Oh yeah, which is just the merge of the two branches, master and dev, and it has a child reference. So the way the commits are being tracked is just given IDs. So that's another story. But it's quite simple. So as an intro, you could just remember those commands, initialize a project, but you could use a graphical tool. I think this is more friendly. Then you could initialize a project, add a file that you want to track. Just work on one file, make a change on that file, commit, do a few commits, do another branch on the same file, then give it to a friend, and then collaborate. Then have the friend change the file, then you can both understand what branching is, right? And then maybe read a few tutorials online. So yeah, but this really helps when it comes to collaborating and just making sure that you're keeping track of all the changes.
Before I invite our guests back in front, does anyone have any questions for you?
Yeah?
Yeah, so for the one who wants to go through, all these things are available on GitHub or
There's the ones I pushed. So I prepared 4 parts of the presentation. There was Ansible, there was server, I guess configuration management with Ansible. that is online. I pushed that today, and then there's that sample project, and also there's a Docker. There's a few Docker compose files that I had. There's a few, but I was using. There's a simple script that is set up to just run all the projects separately, but it's all on Innovation Friday use I use on GitHub. It's under my username, but I think I'll share it. I could put it up. There were 4 parts, but I couldn't go through almost every single part. Yeah, and knowing that some of the guys had never assessed into Linux server, I don't think going to Ansible would have been.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Ian.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I think I'll invite our guest back up here. For first, I'd like Riaz to come tell us a little bit about Angani. I see KFC is up in the back. They're taking orders.
Yeah.
So while we set you up with the mic, probably KFC can take a few orders for you. Yeah.
Hi guys.
Is it on?
Nice to meet you.
I think you can project.
Yeah, I've got 3 choices today. It's KCPE time, so I can talk about myself and sort of my story and career journey, or I can talk about Wananchi Group and Zuku. As a city at Zuku, so we sort of built out the product, the company. I can talk about that, or I can talk about Angani and what we are doing today. So which one would you guys prefer? So maybe what I can do is start with the story and then that covers Zuko along the way to Angani right now. So it's more of a story, less tutorial or lecture. I hope that's fine. Was that what guys were expecting, or guys want a tutorial?
No, that's exactly what we're expecting.
Yeah, so my career actually started, I studied in the States, and then during one of the holidays, I came back to Kenya, and I was missing fast internet. So I walked all around Nairobi. Back then, Nairobi was very small. It was the CBD, and a few parts. There was no traffic jams. But, you know, I was in Nairobi for some time and started looking for a job. And I said, you know, the one thing I need more than a job is fast internet. So I went and knocked on all the ISP's doors. Back then you had Africa Online, you had InstaConnect, you had Kenya Web, Swift Global, FormNet. So I just went around knocking on all the ISP doors, and all of them except one rejected me. Africa Online gave me an interview, asked me some Linux questions. I'd used Linux, right? Because the platform we used at university was all Linux, and I really got into Linux when I was at university, but I'd never, you know, really run it in a production environment. I hadn't run mail servers on Linux. You know, I was in university. I was on holiday. So basically, Africa Online gave me an interview. There was a guy, and then Dave. I went to see Aisi. Aisi was a former sort of schoolmate, Aisi Wakatiani, and you know, he set me up for the interview. And I basically failed the interview because I didn't know enough about production Linux and how to run mail servers on Linux, and so on. I basically knew my basics, right, which was how to get around command line,
getting
shell
audio on your
scripts,
laptop.
that sort of thing. But
It's
that
coming.
wasn't enough.
Papa.
We didn't have Git back in the day. So yeah, finally what happened is Swift Global accepted me and said, fine, we'll give you sort of bus fare, 5,000 shillings. We need someone in the Mombasa office. That's where you're from, so that should be a good internship. So yeah, that's where I started. And luckily, what happened is they were using all Windows-based systems to run their infrastructure. Um, and they used to do static routing. If you know a bit about network and routing, it's sort of how you configure, your IP address on your computer and a gateway, right? So what happens is all your packets from the computer go to the gateway, which is usually your router. Now your router is the one that could be statically configured, meaning it just has get this packet from this interface and send it to this interface, or it could be the way the internet is configured using dynamic routing, using a protocol called BGP. So, they had static routing back then, and when I looked at that setup, I was just like, I've not worked in an ISP, but this is not how we do it in the States. Like, when the internet goes down, an engineer doesn't have to log into something and then make the internet route via another route and come back up. It's not manual like that. Like, when it goes down, it automatically comes up. So that's stuff that now I started talking to the engineers about. I'm like, this is not how this works. Like, it's not how other people on the internet. And then we started figuring out, because back then there was no Google as well, right? So you have to sit, you have to kind of look at a few tutorials, go through that, and then now start looking at this is BGP, this is a protocol, this is how it runs, and you start experimenting with it on the network, and eventually we basically upgraded a lot of those systems. I got called sort of back into Nairobi, and when they did that, you get a daily stipend because now it was away from my home office, so I got very rich. At times. It was more than 5,000 shillings at least. And yeah, we actually had this project where we implemented BGP, dynamic routing. Now everything was flowing without someone's intervention. We upgraded a lot of their Windows systems to Linux. And this was all in a span of 3 to 6 months, right? So it was a really good sort of experience. Then I went back to school. By the time when I was finishing, I got called by the CEO of Swift Global was Richard Bell, who then I've worked with for many years. And, they said basically him and General Manager Mohammed Janabi said, do you want to come back home? We have some very interesting projects that are happening. So as soon as I finished, I kind of immediately got on a plane, came back home. Which is unheard of, right? I was kind of the first Kenyan that went to the States and then came back. But the thing was, the projects that were going on were really interesting projects. Before we built what we went on to build, the market was very regulated by Telkom Kenya. Telkom Kenya used to be the monopoly operator. If you wanted to get internet, you had to get a line from Telkom Kenya. They were the only ones authorized to issue a line. If you wanted to get out of the country, today we have 3 submarine cables. Back then, it was only satellite connectivity, and you're not allowed to operate your own satellite connectivity. You had to buy from Telkom Kenya. There used to be a gateway called JumboNet. So it was a highly regulated environment. And around that time, 2002, the environment was just being deregulated, right? These restrictions that Telkom Kenya had were all sort of being broken down. The government was opening up the licensing, and now anyone who wanted to build network infrastructure was allowed to apply for a license, get a license, and then be able to build a network infrastructure. It was around the same time Safaricom, back then Kensal, were coming up as well, right? So mobile connectivity was just coming into the market. So those were exciting times kind of from a network perspective, because you were basically taking a country that had no connectivity and you were building the first reliable network in the country. So what we did was the company that was started was called Kenya Data Networks, KDN. And I was the CTO there, and we basically set out to build a private data network. We started by building a wireless backbone, so we used point-to-point microwaves. We had some wireless base stations, similar to kind of what you have just outside here. There's the big mast outside the USIU gate with some Wi-Fi equipment and stuff. We were using a technology that was a predecessor of WiMAX called OFDM. So that was like pre-WiMAX. After that technology, then WiMAX came in, and then after WiMAX, it was LTE and so on. So that's the technology we settled on, and we built out this network, and the network was reliable, right? Because it was not built by government civil servants working for Telkom Kenya. It was built by us, and we had to serve real customers. We targeted the banking and financial industry. One of our first customers was Equity Bank. And the reason Equity Bank was able to grow is because finally they were able to roll out a proper IT-based banking system on their network. Because before, that was impossible. Because with no connectivity, what sort of IT system are you going to run your banking? It's going to be down all the time, right? So everyone sort of had all the analog-based systems. And Equity, because of the reliable connectivity, was one of the first people that was able to roll out a really good IT system. And we were kind of there. Like Equity would be opening up branches everywhere, right? Nearly Karatina, Nakuru, Eldoret. Before the branch opened, the Monday before the branch opened, we would be there that weekend setting up the network connectivity, right? So that kind of gave me a chance to see a lot of towns in Kenya because we were there connecting them. And then, because of that connectivity, they were able to become what Equity Bank is today. So that's some of the things that we managed to accomplish. We managed to get businesses to now start investing in IT-based systems, whereas all these businesses were running analog systems before. And that's kind of what drives me, right? It's being able to make a difference. I mean, what reason is there to leave sort of cushy jobs in the States and come back home if you're not able to make a difference back home, right? So that's one of the key things that drives me in whatever I do is, am I making a difference, and how big a difference can I make? So with KDN, we actually made a difference, right? And following that, the company basically kept growing. The problem with the network was we kept running out of capacity. So we put in a wireless backbone, we filled it up. We put in a laser link, we filled it up. Like a laser link can give you 100 meg or a gigabit speed on a point-to-point link. The only problem is it's based on light. So in Nairobi, when you get fog, the light path is blocked. So we used to have at 6 a.m. every day, Nairobi gets foggy, our links go down. So we started then thinking about, we keep running out of capacity. Let's start laying some fiber. And this was probably the first time anyone in Africa had said, let's lay some fiber. Everyone kept saying, Africa wireless, Africa wireless. Like connectivity in Africa, it's always going to be wireless because those guys steal all the cables. But we went in and we laid the fiber, right? And that was sort of the first fiber backbone. And it's kept growing since then. Right now in Kenya, you have at least 5 people that have laid fiber that operate fiber networks. And this is what has enabled sort of Kenya to kind of leapfrog when it comes to IT development, in terms of companies embracing IT, and also in terms of all the stuff you hear about innovation, developers, and all that stuff is really possible because of connectivity, because of internet access, right? So after KDN, I did some work in Rwanda and Tanzania. I worked basically for some investors that wanted to basically roll out next generation networks from the old telco days. But around 2006, I was in Tanzania. That's a horrible place because if you want to really do something, you have a project or anything, and you want to just go for it. It's sort of a really bad place because everything moves slow, like completely slow. Guys just don't move. To get a license, it takes like 6 months. It's a long process, and you have to, go schmooze people, naomba, all that stuff. So, if you're going, you want a nice cushy job where you're just gonna go punch in 8 to 5 as you wait around for things to happen. Perfect place. You go to the beach, you go to Zanzibar every weekend. Nice, very cushy place. But if you're going to get things done, that's not the place. So I was banging my head against the wall because, the investors wanted to roll out a network. I wanted to accomplish something, but it just wasn't happening. So, around 2006, sort of, before that time, what we'd been thinking about is the networks had been made. Like Kenya had lots of fiber, but then it had 3 fiber operators. But the problem still was that, connectivity for the mass market consumer, us guys, was still expensive. You would need to pay $100, around 10,000 shillings. Well, back then the dollar was not 10. So it was around 7,000 shillings back then. Now the dollar is crazy. You had to pay 7,000 to 10,000 shillings to get 64 kbps link. A 64 kbps link. That's only twice as fast as a modem, right? A modem runs at 33 kbps, and we used to work back in the modern times, and we used to download MP3s even back then. But you couldn't do video. There's no internet video back then. So we started by saying, we've sort of with KDN, we improved connectivity for the corporates, and then so many people laid fiber, but the costs are still really expensive. So we started with one basic thing, right? I came back to Kenya. Richard was also now planning, how do we do broadband? So we met kind of synced up. And we say the basic principle was for $20 for, back then $20 was 1,500 shillings. For between 1,000 to 2,000 shillings, you give someone real broadband. Real broadband, we defined it back then as 512K, but then we redefined it and said at least 1 megabit, unlimited use is broadband. So that's how Zuku started, right? That was our mission, is to provide 1,000 to 2,000 shillings based connectivity for everyone, unlimited, as much as they wanted, right? And we started by saying, okay, how do we build this network? We looked at WiMAX as a technology, and initially Zuku actually rolled out WiMAX, right? As a technology, wireless technology, because cable takes long to roll out. So we started with WiMAX, but when we went and looked at WiMAX as a technology, we knew that with all the trees in Nairobi, because trees absorb microwave signals, so there's no way if you're living in a tree cover, if you go to any building in Nairobi and you go to the roof, you'll pretty much see what I'm talking about. The whole of Nairobi is green. And it's full of trees, and that's the most horrible thing you can get for microwave or wireless technologies, right? The only reason 3G, 4G penetrate really well is because they're much lower in sort of the spectrum bands. So those frequencies can penetrate. But when it comes to WiMAX, which operates at higher than 2 gigahertz, it really doesn't penetrate trees. So we had to figure out a network design to make the wireless thing work. But we knew even before we started rolling out WiMAX that the only real way to deliver broadband was going to be basically to roll out cable, um, some sort of fiber cable that would cover every home in Nairobi, in Mombasa, in any African city. Because without laying that infrastructure and relying on wireless, you're always going to have a digital divide, right? Like today, for example, you have 3G, you have LTE, but you don't do any video streaming on it, right? Because it's expensive, because it's metered, because if Safaricom opens up and says unlimited 3G, guess what's going to happen? The base station is going to get full. So the only way to deliver proper data to people, unlimited data, is by having physical fiber to their houses. And during this process, the submarine cables also landed, so they enabled Africa to connect better to the rest of the world. So yeah, that's what we set out doing. We set out now rolling cable on every street, every home, and it was an interesting journey that maybe one day we can sort of go through the architecture and all that stuff with the guys of you who are interested in telecoms. But the way the type of stuff we were able to do was revolutionary. There's no one who had done it here. There's still no one who has done it sort of properly on the continent. It requires a lot of capital, but we rolled out fiber. We started offering broadband. Now you can't roll out fiber to the house and only just provide broadband, right? So we started providing cable TV services, and that required us to build basically a video department. And the video department would be able to go out, make deals for channels. And the advantage of cable is it's not like DSTV and satellite. DSTV and satellite again uses spectrum, which is a limited resource. On fiber, you have an unlimited resource, so you can carry as many channels as you want. You can carry, like in the States, they carry 600 channels or something. In India, they carry some 800 channels or more than that. So, but we were able to carry around 150 channels. That was fine. Channels are expensive, and this is why there's always a fight around sports, around other content, because that content is really expensive, and the subscribers pay for it, right? So we did a lot of video setup, head-ends, multiplex, all these channels. We were receiving channels from satellite. Some of them where those channels were not carried on satellite footprint, like American channels and so on. We would receive them in London. We had a teleport in London that would receive all the channels, would put it on the fiber and bring them via fiber to Kenya, multiplex in the head end. So that's kind of how you, when you switch on your Zuku TV, that's sort of some of the process that goes into it. In terms of bringing all those channels to your screen. We had to also then create our own channels, because the problem is if you go out and tell, you try and get Discovery. Discovery has been signed on by DSTV for 20 years, 30 years, right? So it's an exclusive agreement, because those agreements were done in the 80s and 90s when there was no competition, and there was no competition coming anytime in the future. So DSTV managed to get a lot of monopoly on that. But if you go to Discovery, they'll tell you the individual documentaries don't have any exclusives. So we actually bought those individual documentaries. We bought movies from the studios and created our own channels. Right, so that was sort of play out, which is actually one of the things we do now at Angani. But we basically created our own. If you've seen the Zuku Movies channel, Zuku Movies Action, Zuku Movies, the Zuku Sports channels as well. It's basically by buying the individual content, the movies, the documentaries, and then packaging it together to form a proper channel. So we created around 10 channels growing on to about 15 channels that way. And then we said, since we've created all these channels, and we're only serving them to a population that has Zuku cable TV, that's a very small population. You don't recover your money because you're only targeting a group of 100,000 people in Kenya, right? Because that's how many people live in the middle class areas in Nairobi and Mombasa. That's how many homes there are. 100,000. Yeah, well, the total homes with power in Nairobi, like legal power, is around 400,000. Yeah, 4 to 500,000. Zuku's cable network, we rolled it out to about 250,000 homes. So it's about half of all the homes that have power. And you really have to sort of, you segment Nairobi's demographics to really cover sort of the A, B, and sort of your C1 households. We try to roll out in places like Umoja. So a place like Buruburu really works well. A place like Umoja doesn't work so well. So we had to introduce lower end products. We had to introduce 1,000 shilling products, broadband only type of products to cater for that market. And you still had a problem sort of penetrating because the rent in Umoja is like 4,000 or 5,000 shillings. Like you can't sell them internet for 1,000 shillings when his rent is 4,000 shillings, right? So to recover your investment, you have to choose the type of areas that you can roll out to. But since then, the rollout has been increasing, right? Because now it's covering Garden Estate, like all the Thika Road area. That's sort of the current rollout. It goes all the way up to Athi River. When we started, Nairobi was not this big. There was no Thika Road. And then, down Athi River sides, that was just coming up. So when you looked at Nairobi Metropolitan, we used to have maps, right, where we drew Nairobi Metropolitan, and that's the area that we were interested in covering. And then eventually the map kind of evolved into having these spokes that went up to Limuru, that went up to Athi River, and on the other side went up to Kikuyu, because that's how Nairobi was evolving. That's kind of how it was growing. So that's the rollout still continues, but it costs a lot to lay fiber, right? It costs about $20,000 on average to lay a kilometer of fiber. So it's an expensive exercise. The 250,000 homes, if you average it out, the density of homes per kilometer is about 100 in Nairobi. So you can sort of estimate kind of how many kilometers you have to lay out. But that's all. Like from guys who love technology and guys who love making a difference, for me this was a dream world, right? Because we got to play with video, we got to play with internet, we got to play with data, we got to play with satellite, and that was the story. We basically, because of buying all this content that was really expensive, we decided, now we can't just serve the cable TV guys, we have to serve a much wider region. So we rolled out satellite TV, which is actually much more affordable to roll out than cable TV. You just have to get a huge, massive dish. Like we got a 9-meter dish, and we basically broadcast our signal to a satellite, and that automatically broadcasted our signal to 30 countries. So from like I was saying, that's a very interesting project for anyone to have done, right? Because we were sitting at the cutting edge of technology and doing all these really cool things. So I stayed at Zuku for quite a while, 7 years. And then it was time to sort of do something new now. And that's where now, this was the harder part, right? Because with KDN, we disrupted internet, we brought internet to all the businesses. With Zuko, we disrupted internet. We brought internet to all the houses. Hopefully, you guys are using Zuko. So, um, so what do you do next? And it's not so clear, right? Because what is it that is missing in this chain of bringing internet to Kenya and bringing reliable, affordable connectivity? So the one problem we always had is the reason internet is expensive in Africa, even with the submarine cables coming, is because all the content sits outside, right? Google is outside, Facebook is outside, Nation is hosted outside, Standard is hosted outside. So all this content is sitting outside the country, which means that to get to this content, you have to go across the submarine cable, one which is a long path. It's a 200 millisecond path to get to the States or London, which is the closest place where there's an internet hub. And at Zuko, we tried to do quite a bit of stuff to try and bring these costs down. The submarine cost is the biggest cost in the entire Zuko service, right? Like 30 to 40% of your Zuko bill goes to paying for submarine cable internet, because it's really expensive. Now, how do you bring it down? It costs about $200 to buy a megabit from any ISP in Kenya, if you're buying a dedicated megabit. If you go to London, it costs you less than $1 to buy a megabit. All right? And why is it that way? It's because the content and the users have been put in the same place. They have local servers in London. All the content providers, Google, Facebook, all those guys are in the same place. So with local fiber, you can access the content, right? Now with Kenya, it's an interesting situation because now everything is sitting outside. So what we're trying to do with Angali is offer a reliable hosting platform where anyone who wants to host any content, develop any content, and so on, can host it locally within the country. And we see that if you start doing that, then a lot of the content will start coming here. And if that content is here, what does that mean? It means that to access that content, you no longer have to cross the submarine cable. So slowly by slowly, like Google put in some caches locally here, right? That's what made YouTube finally work. Before, YouTube used to buffer and everything, but as of around 5 years ago, Google put the local caches and YouTube started working. And when YouTube started working, basically 30% of an ISP's bandwidth was no longer crossing the submarine cable. It was staying in country. So ISPs automatically saved 30% of their bottom line costs because they didn't have to buy that traffic from CCOM or Teams anymore, right? So that's what we're aiming to do, is provide a platform where another 20% of content or more can be hosted back home, and this will save ISPs another 20%. And now you're saving them 50%. So now internet costs $100 instead of $200. And the more and more content you keep hosting locally, basically then drives your overall internet price down. So that's kind of our larger mission. But as we've rolled out the cloud service, we've seen a lot of potential to disrupt other areas. Some of the cool things we do is, I mean, apart from providing developer VMs, where now you have a service similar to Amazon but sitting at home. Like I was telling, our price, we reduced it recently, so it's starting from 512 shillings for a virtual machine per month. So for 500 shillings a month, you can have your own server running off our cloud. This roughly equates to $4.85, which is now cheaper than DigitalOcean. So we have the cheapest virtual machines in the world. And apart from that, some of the cool things we've been able to do is because our cloud platform, what we're essentially doing is buying a lot of capacity. We've bought tons of servers that we then virtualize. These are packed with, terabytes of RAM. And when you virtualize that environment, you can literally create right now more than 5,000 servers on our platform. If you go to maximize the capacity. So we have that much capacity. We have close to a petabyte of storage capacity. And the reason we got the storage capacity is because we have a pretty cool product, I think, which is our media product. And the media product, what it does, it's a platform that lets anyone create a TV station on the cloud. So what you do is upload all your content to our cloud. We give you a place where you can, store it, tag it. You'll have, you can custom tag it. You can put all the genre, cast, details, shoot date, air date. If you're doing online learning, you can put class name, lecturer name. So you can put a lot of metadata associated with the content. Then we help you create playlists out of that content. And the playlist is essentially how a TV station is created, right? Nation, all they do is they have a playlist that says 8 o'clock start news, 8:05 break for ad, 8:10 play this news clip, 8:12 switch back to presenter. So that's essentially a playlist. So we allow you to create that playlist, and at the end of the playlist you have a full TV station. And since it's all happening on the cloud, you can deliver the TV station to normal channels like Zuku or DSTV or PAN or Signet, or you can also deliver it online, right? So you can have your online 24/7 TV station. And the other advantage is you can also do video on demand stuff. So, online learning, any sort of video on demand, you can do lectures, you can do events, you can do news clips. So that's one of the cool things that we're doing with the platform that we're excited about. Yeah, so that's kind of the story from 5,000 shillings to where we are today. The startup life is not easy, right? I think the advantage with KDN and Zuko was you get paid. It's still a startup environment. You're still creating a company, but you get paid for it. In a real startup, you don't get paid until you've sold service and you figured out who's paying for your service and you've collected the money. So that's a whole set of other challenges on entrepreneurship and stuff that we're now learning along the way. But yeah, that's the story. I hope it's not too boring. Yeah, any questions? Yeah.
So far, since starting up, what happens to you?
Everything. We had to move around offices because whenever you hire someone, we started by operating out of an apartment, a small room in an apartment. So that fit like 4 people, and then when you hire 5 people, now you have to look for a bigger room. So 1 month we moved to 88 MPH, and then now we moved to nice offices that we share with Africa's Talking, which are really cool. You should come visit. So that's one, and then building the product, building the perfect product, dealing with customer service, cash flow issues. You're not always going to be able to collect. Some customers will pay you after 6 months for a service that you've already provided, and you can't disconnect the customer because if you disconnect, he'll go somewhere else, and he'll get pissed off at you. So it's a lot of these sort of business skills, and every company has those. Yeah. Yeah.
They did the same for person, but from a consumer perspective, the charges the same. So what's the benefit?
So you remember what I told you about fiber being available in plenty in Kenya. The problem with a lot of Kenyan businesses is even if your costs are reduced or there's competition or there's different market environments, Kenyan businesses love putting their margins way high, right? So like definitely moving M-Pesa back home results in a cost saving for them, but that cost saving hasn't been translated back to the consumer. We come from a different mindset. The reason we were able to build Zuku, because we could have said very happily, like, internet is going to cost 10,000 shillings in Kenya. And that's where we would have started. So to cause real disruption, you need a disruptive force. And you don't have very many of these disruptive forces in Kenya. Not from a price perspective, at least. A lot of companies, you will find the way competition works in Kenya, you will have, at one point there were 50 ISPs in Kenya, but the price was still, the price for dial, that is, was still 5,000 shillings a month. Right? And this was dial, 33 kbps, and you pay for the voice minutes on top of that. So it really depends on the types of companies that come in, the types of people that come in. I think there's room for a lot of disruption, but there's also room for more people to join the business. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the rollout is always the biggest challenge. Even in the States, there are still areas that are rural areas that don't have any sort of connectivity, fiber or even telephones, and so on. So for those areas, and this is something that personally I felt is a problem for us to tackle. Fiber cable, Zuku type services, it makes sense to roll those out in middle income areas, right? So it makes sense to do them in Nairobi, in Mombasa, Nakuru, maybe in some of the key estates you will have fiber. But then in areas that now start getting sort of smaller or less dense, you have to figure out, some sort of wireless method using Wi-Fi or something else to provide the same level of unlimited connectivity. Because I'm a believer that connectivity has to be unlimited. It can't be metered, right? There's no reason why you should control how much YouTube you watch. So I think that's a challenge, where someone has to put in the capital. Like I said, it costs $20,000 to lay a kilometer. If you go down to lay the whole of Kenya, that's going to be very expensive, right? But at the same time, whatever technology you choose and whatever you roll out has future impact. Right now, we're doing video streaming, right? But you've already seen people are developing holographic technology. Cisco's doing some stuff where you have holograms coming on stage talking, etc. How much bandwidth do you think a hologram consumes? Are you going to be able to do that on 3G or even 4G? Right? So that's the challenge. We sort of are going to end up with an impact on, how the digital divide is going to keep growing bigger if we don't choose the right technologies. Yeah. Yeah. Riaz. Yeah.
So you started at yeah. So how do you manage to start up the organization that big and have people believe you to the extent that they invest like $20,000 per kilometer of fiber? That's
Yeah, Zuko raised about $300 million.
so how did you
But I didn't raise that. I was just the tech guy. I took the investors around on road trips and showed them this is the cool fiber we're laying, and got them excited about the whole thing. It's largely networks of people. When we were fundraising for Angani, the types of investors we went and targeted. First, you need to have a product. You need to have a business. So for that sort of starting out capital, you basically put your own savings. You go to your family, everyone else, right? And that's how you raise. You know, you whether you need to raise 500,000 shillings, 1,000,000 shillings, whatever it is. But then after that, when you go to investment, now you need to have a business. You need to have done something with the 500,000 shillings, 1,000,000 shillings, whatever it is. So at Angani, that's kind of where we really went out ourselves and got funding. That's how we did it. We initially bootstrapped, got money from family. So after you bootstrap and you actually build the product, get customers, then we were able to go and get investors. So then we raised investment money. At Zuko, it was a different story. The partners of Zuko, the CEO is Richard Bell, was still vice chairman of the board. He partnered with Mark Schneider. Mark Schneider, his family ran UPC Global, which was a cable TV operator based in the US and Europe. So his family has been in the cable business since the 60s. So they've put in some of their own money, which was an initial seed capital of around $5-10 million. And then after that, now they got other people to put in funds. And there is a lot of funds also from OPIC, which is the US government body for private investment overseas. Yeah.
So basically, for Angani, you're like, you still the tech guy?
I'm a sales guy now. So I don't do any tech. Actually, the thing is, even at Zuko, KDN, I was the tech guy who sort of did what Ian did here and, code everything and configure all the routers and knew where everything was. At Zuko, we had to have a team because, I basically was hardly able to log into anything. Mine was a lot of coordination work, project management work. So the CTO role differs depending on the size of the company. At Angani, my role calls for me to do sales and make sure there's money in the bank. So that's what I do. We have another CTO who's brilliant, called Brad. Yeah. Anyone else? Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Next, I think we have Caesar. He can tell us about a few of his adventures as a consultant at the iHub. Yeah. So anyone who's interested in user experience, user design, Caesar is your guy.
Hi guys. So I have a very short story compared to Regia's impromptu monologue. Mine is very, very short. My background actually starts off at USAU. I was the guy who put together the yearbook for 2010. Yes. So I had no clue about design, computers. I was pretty much a networking guy. And my first exposure to this world of design really caught me. And after that, I just became obsessed with it. So after the book actually eventually launched, I started doing a lot of tutorials, a lot of them. Eventually, after about 2 years, I applied for the Green Membership, iHub, got in, and I did a presentation. They normally have these quarterly meetings. What happens is you pitch your idea, and the board of iHub actually vets it, and if you're really cool, they give you consultancy gigs. Pretty much any job coming from the big blue chip companies in Nairobi, or the NGO bodies actually have in Nairobi, goes to you. So you get the tips of any consultancy jobs. So I became the UX consultant for iHub. I think by then I was still in my 4th year at USAU. And during that time, I encountered a lady called Nivi Moherej. So this is now the president for Elimu Education. At that time, she was, actually no, Brick. Brick is the company that provides pretty much Wi-Fi in really remote locations. And she was trying to pretty much digitize the whole education syllabus for Kenya. And I had an idea back then about how cool it would be. You remember how you're in class 3 and you're being told about how the solar system works, being able to visualize planets, but nobody really actually put that into a format which was palatable for students. And that's what the first project that we did. We took the whole solar system, we got education consultants on board, came up with a metric where you would actually pretty much have a virtual tour of the universe. And we did our first application. I got it installed on all the Elimo tablets. Our launch for that was in November 2012. So by then, Samsung Foundation gave about $500,000 to Elimo Foundation, specifically to roll out tablets in regards to digitizing the syllabus. And we started this off with Kaungari Primary. So by then, when it actually rolled out, they found that the increase of learning in terms of being able to understand what is going on increased by around 60%, which is really, really cool for Elimo. So going back a bit to 2011, I was interning at a Google applications company somewhere in Upper Hill, and I had an idea that was somewhat out of Africa in terms of its scope. And I pretty much just walked into Sarova on my way to work and asked for a meeting with the marketing manager. The first thing I was asked is, do you have a meeting schedule? Of course I said no. So I said, okay, I'll just wait. So 2 hours later, I finally get a meeting with the marketing manager, and I pitched them this idea about iMenu. That's what we're currently working on, and that's what we have funding for. So iMenu was conceptualized in such a way that picture you being able to walk into a place like Sarova, you get this high-end tablet on the table, you log in, it knows who you are, it knows who your friends are, it knows what you've been eating for the last 2.5 years. Every single plate has a calorie intake, being able to actually pretty much track your life in terms of how you eat and what you eat. So they loved it. The only issue was it was all in my mind. There was no developers, there was no office, there was no designers, it was all me. And I was really, really excited. I actually didn't go to work that day. I went back to USA, looked for the 5 smartest people I could find, and I pitched them the idea. I told them they had 4 weeks to actually come up with something really, really cool, and we did. So 4 weeks later, we go back to the Sarova marketing manager, who this time has gotten so excited. He's brought in the group level executives. So I'm walking in with jeans and a shirt, and everybody's just walking in with suits. About 6 fellas. All of them with tablets and looking at me like I'm lost. So I pitched the iMenu idea to them again. They love it. Again, still, this was just 5 people who I'd randomly met who just loved my idea to actually build it. And I actually needed 4 things. So iMenu was not only an application on the client side. This is actually being able to have business intelligence in terms of being able to actually monitor what is happening in, let's say, Sarova has 54 restaurants. Every single restaurant has about 50 tablet installations. Each of those needs to be able to have a hardware lifecycle management in terms of what's happening in terms of, okay, was there a patch released by Samsung for security? How are we going to roll out for all those tablets, even those in the Mara? So that kind of thing hadn't really caught my mind back then. And I told them, give me a year, I'll get back to you. So I went out and I found again the smartest person I could actually come across at the time, and by this time was really, really good in design. So I told them do the design for the application, both for the client side, the kitchen side, and the cloud-based platform for management. And they agreed. So we delivered an MVP. This was sometime in 2013. So the Samsung guys by this time are really, really excited and they want to jump on board. And still, we didn't have the funding to actually take it to where it's supposed to be. So one sunny afternoon, I get a message on LinkedIn saying, let's have coffee in regards to your project. And it turns out this is the VP for Citibank for Australia, and they just happen to love the idea and don't put money into it. So again, there's no really direct correlation between getting funding and actually setting an application. You just have to start with where you are and build it up from there. So we got the team, we got the buy-in from the bank in terms of being able to actually come up with a business model where we don't charge the hotels for the actual tablets. We're giving the tablets away for free and spreading the cost over 3 years. It was a lease agreement of sorts. So we got Citibank to do that for us. Then in terms of being able to have a payment gateway. So whenever you go to a place like Java now, the devices you see that the waiter comes to you with, those are second generation payment terminals. They pretty much can't do anything that is supposed to be done now. And the global provider for that device is called VeriSign. So VeriSign, again, got excited. Every person who pitched the idea got excited about it. And they decided to give us the API to link our application with the payment gateway. So by then, it reached a point where Equity got involved. So they gave us a couple of developers to work with in terms of hooking up Equitel, all the mobile money platforms you can think of with the application. So I think fast forward, we're looking at about 3 months to release. And then from there, God knows. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what my company is doing. Questions?
Okay, so I just want to, there was one question you asked at the beginning.
Yes.
Along with networking, right? Just for the sake of these guys who came in late, can you just go over the whole networking angle again? Because I think you coming from the SIU have experience that would be relatable for us guys here.
Okay, first of all, there was a question you asked earlier about being introverted and actually gradually being able to network and build your referral base, pretty much. People who can actually trust you and tell others about you. Just so you know, a couple of minutes ago, apparently we might actually be getting funding from the VC just from that brief introductions. So it doesn't, there's really no pattern to it. It's all about putting yourself out there. Like for me, I was obsessed with meeting people with really, really cool ideas. I have the typical IRB, if there's such a thing, pretty much walks in, works the project, and at the end of the day, closes the laptop and goes home. For me, it was, okay, I've seen you have a map on your laptop. What are you working on which would actually work well with what I'm doing? And that network of interest leads to commercial interest, if that makes sense. So share your idea, share it a lot, share it with everyone. That's the one thing I can tell you. Yeah. Oh, and in terms of business model, I was not the most financially capable individual. So it just happened that my partner now has 30 years of finance in terms of the background, and we came up with a very solid business model. Because no matter how cool your idea is, if you can't actually show in numbers in terms of 6-year projections how much you're going to make, how much you're going to use in terms of expenditures per month, how much your employees are going to cost, how many employees are going to increase per day or per month, you need to be able to do that from the get-go. So no matter how good a developer you are, get a designer on board, get an accounts guy on board, form a team. You might think they might actually steal your idea, but it's highly unlikely. Be willing to actually share your idea, and yeah, there's so much I can tell you about that networking.
Normal app making this will create the code, but it's the age of open source, so finish in place you know. So what is the best idea to make this? If you want to make something to be, so is it a must for somebody to go and pitch with guys or make it happen in such a way that this app must help these guys to learn to fund me or just simply learn to make an app and wait for it to make it.
I revert back to what Graham said. It needs to be a pain point that is affecting a lot of people. It's two variations, okay? You can either go with like what we're doing with the menu is a very small niche. It's only 5-star hotels. People who can actually afford to buy the solution. But the kind of volume in terms of capital you can actually spend is worthwhile. We can go mass market, the Mambo Mbogas, your M-Pesa kind of solution, and have very small incremental margins on your deal. So in terms of, give me an example of the kind of idea that you're talking about. Yeah, give it away for free. Gain traction. What I'm saying is numbers validate commercials. Okay, the only reason why NMG actually bothered to talk to us after we put together the application is because we got 80,000 downloads to 100,000 downloads without any advertising. People just kept on sharing it to their friends.
So you just go ahead and wait and see the reaction.
Yeah, so you can't really generalize into the specific verticals. Like the way my company works is we are normally approached with specific problems. Let's say the agriculture. Working on an issue right now where FAO and FSD, the arms of the UN, they're trying to find a way to distribute information in the most efficient way to people who are mashinani. So guys who've graduated and they don't want to go to the 8 to 5, they actually want to go to the farmland back home. They have 1 acre of land, but they have no clue how to actually grow it. So information about soil, pH, rainfall, all that. So there's really no specific solution on how best to deploy application. I just say build it and throw it into the world and see what happens. But have a business model from the beginning. Like most games normally partner with NGOs. Like example is the guys from Tanzania. You've heard of Pivotist? Pivotist, anybody's heard of it? So Pivotist is your annual competition for techpreneurs, people with ideas, and developers. And one of the ideas from there was actually a lady from Tanzania who came up with an application that pretty much does one thing: shows kids how to kill mosquitoes on a screen. That was it. And he did nothing else. There was no commercial element to it. There was no validation on how you're going to make money. But she just kept on pitching it, and eventually some NGO from Netherlands just happened to like the idea and we partnered together. So there's no standard solution which would work for everyone. The one thing I tell you is just believe in your idea and pitch it. Just build it. Come up with a minimum of a viable product, something that actually works, you actually demonstrate, then use that as a basis.
Concerning the user interface. Now, you see, when gathering user requirements, I find it subjective. Like, you come up with something, but when you approach someone, he says, Oliver, I don't like the colors, or Oliver, here you should do like this. And is there like a general thing that you follow to gather going to a good sample of where you go?
Yeah, actually, hopefully in the coming weeks we'll have talks with Max and yourselves about UI and UX. It's definitely a field you need to explore and actually understand, because people are really petty when they're downloading applications. The first impressions people get of Kenyan applications pretty much get you subjected to deletion, or just in the big rows of applications that never get used. So the first thing you need to do is actually define a demographic. Like, what's your target market? You can't really build an application for everyone. Not everyone will actually like your application. An example for that is, let's say you're building an application for executives between the age of 40 and 50, guys who earn about 200,000 shillings and they have 3 kids. So ask those specific guys questions about the color scheme, the kind of arrangement, what's the first thing they want to see, what's the minimum number of steps they actually want to take before they're reaching the goal. Those are you need to build a profile around your application. You can't build the application for everyone. So once you actually have your demographic in place, you can actually go on and actually do a proper profile, and then you build it afterwards. Because most developers typically dive into the deep end of do the backend algorithms, then figure out the UI later, which turns out to be a mess.
As you're pitching this idea, did you get potential information and you just did it by faith?
The first thing I did, I had to sit down with an IP lawyer. So it just so happened that there was one in residency at the HAP, and they guided me through what I need to protect, what I can protect, and what you can't. And it took about 6 months to get the trademark for iMenu, first of all. You need to protect your ideas. Most people rarely do that because they don't really know about it. So I'll tell you this, if possible, just research a bit on IP law in Kenya. There's a whole office, I think it's a whole building along Mombasa Road called KIPI. The only work is to protect IP. So go research on that, see how much it costs. The typical cost of doing a trademark for your ID or name is about 20,000 shillings. it takes about 6 months because they have to get, do the advert on the Gazette, get feedback. If there's any rebuttal, they go back and actually tell you about it. But it's a 6-month process. So yes, protecting your idea is critical.
Okay, so when you're talking apps, I just wanted to pick your brain. On the design side and on the development side, what is your typical tool set?
So for me, I'm a hardcore designer. I pretty much am really picky about the process, the interactions, the workflow, and I write everything out. So when the developer is actually implementing the idea, there's a specific set of instructions to follow. He's not making up stuff as he goes. Because they know, okay, right now the Kenyan scene of application development is your developer comes up with an idea, comes up with it, then approaches the designer who has to fit the ideas to what the developer has in mind. But my company specifically starts with UI, then code comes next. It's not the other way around. You can't start with code and then fix the elements later and expect it to work. You can't. Like a good example of that is every single step or function that you're looking for needs to be at most 3 steps away or 3 clicks away from the user. Think about it in these terms. When you're looking at Facebook, how many clicks does it take you to get from the home page to profile edit to your number? It's 3. How many clicks does it take you to go from the home page to go to the revise my privacy settings? It's 3. So the minimum number of steps possible is always best. So always think with the end user in mind. If possible, have them next to you. Yeah.
All right, that's all that we have. Thank you for coming for Innovation Fridays. Hopefully we'll have Caesar back again. I'm sure you'll be around campus. Yeah, thanks guys. Are there any questions or comments? Any ideas for next Friday? Well, next Friday's exams, or maybe the Friday after. All right, so thank you for coming. This is our idea of innovation. KFC is still taking orders. We want to get as many orders as we can so that they can support us with a few freelancers here and there. Also, make sure you write something on our whiteboard about innovation before you leave. Yeah, thank you for coming. Thanks, Lisa.
See ya. Yeah, I'm getting out. Yes.